Longhorn Nation, Sooner fans, welcome to episode 128 of the Bevo Podcast, the only podcast exclusively dedicated to covering the greatest rivalry in college football, the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma. I'm here with my man Kevin Miller. I am John Whitson. Kevin, Oklahoma fan is jealous of one thing about the University of Texas over the last 2 years, and that is that you folks have had and will have this weekend a marquee non-conference game. Last year, you got to travel to Tuscaloosa, where you upended mighty Alabama, and this Saturday, you travel to Ann Arbor, Michigan, the home of the winningest team in college football history. Are you fired up or what?
Listen, I'm so excited, man. It feels like not quite like a Red River week, but almost there. Almost there. I'm really excited about this.
Well, it's pretty cool, right? It's pretty cool to be able to play at Michigan. I mean, they just won a national championship. I know it's not Michigan from last year, but it is still Michigan, national championship. You get to go to their place. You get to escape the Texas heat if you're a Texas fan and you're fortunate enough to travel, get to go up to Michigan. I'm just jealous, dude. We're stuck playing Houston. And when we go through it, what looks like a terrible Houston team. So I'm a little jealous of it. I'm happy for you guys. I'm happy we have something to talk about today. Quick thoughts on the game. Just give us a little teaser what we're going to talk about.
Well, man, it's so curious, man. The clash of styles here, right? We all know what Michigan is about. They're super physical. They love to run the ball. They want to stop your running game. They love to get after the quarterback. Texas, while we love to run the ball too, would be physical, but we also have a pretty dynamic passing attack too. So we'll see what style wins out. I'm really excited about it. I don't know about you. I know you were raised a Sooner, right? Your father's a Sooner.
Yep.
I didn't have any connection to college football, so I just discovered it on my own. So watching it in the early 90s, Michigan was always on. So I'm pretty sure Hail to the Victors was the first fight song that I recognized, right? They always play it.
Listen, I'm partial to Boomer Sooner. Okay?
Yeah.
I think you like We've Been Working on the Railroad as much as the next guy. But is that y'all's fight song?
No, Texas fight. That's the Eyes of Texas alma mater.
That's right. But Hail to the Victors, man. Between that and Notre Dame, I don't know what's more iconic in the sport. It really is. It's really, really cool. We're going to talk a little bit. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot more about this game. So I don't want to give away everything I'm going to go with. Real quick, back to the University of Oklahoma. I'm always looking for ways to start the show. And I really didn't have necessarily anything I was going to go with. But right before we recorded, I jumped on Twitter just to see if there was anything, tracking as it relates to OU football. There is a local media member. I guess my point is, this is how bad the performance was on Saturday for the OU offense. That a local respected media member and former player on the national championship team in 1975 actually said that OU is going to miss Gavin Freeman at wide receiver, and that he would have been the difference in us having a dynamic offense or not. Kevin, you saw the game on Friday night. What the hell are we talking about? Gavin Freeman, come on, man. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's the issue. So not Tyler Guyton or, Gavin Freeman. You're fine at receiver.
What about Cade Green?
Correct. Yeah.
What about the guy we love? Yeah, give me that. Give me who's the kid? Gibson, right? Jaden Gibson, getting him hurt. Okay, I'll take that. Gavin Freeman, stop it, dude.
Yeah, I mean, even with the injury to Farouk, you guys are fine at receiver. Receivers, I think it's a concern, but it's not your biggest concern at all.
Well, I think, listen, I am a little concerned about wide receiver, Not to the point where I'm reaching out to Gavin Freeman and asking him to reconsider transferring back to Tulsa. Like that's the least of my concerns. I mean, I want to see Nick Anderson healthy. I want to see Brendan Thompson take advantage of his speed. I want to see a little bit better use of the tight end, although I thought we had good use of the tight end. I would love to see Jaquez Petaway. I don't think we saw him in week one.
He was out there. I think they threw him a pass, but I think it was incomplete. But he was definitely out there.
So I want to see him. Zion Kearney. There's a lot of names out there.
Ivan Carrion kid had a few catches too.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been on Twitter as long as we've been on this podcast, and I understand that there's engagement farming and people put out stupid stuff just to do this. But I really don't feel like this was the case. I feel like this particular media member truly believes the missing link is Gavin Freeman. And as a take, it just blows my mind. It just blows my mind. I've started some stupid stuff from fans before, but never anything so stupid from a media member.
Did he play for Oklahoma State on Saturday? Was he out there?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. He went to Oklahoma State. Why did I say Tulsa? I don't even know. I don't know. Was he like dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, he was not, guy that was used. He's only kind of a gadget type player. Jet sweeps, punt returner. And I know he frustrated OU fans with some of his decisions when it came to fielding punts last year, too.
I don't even know if we talked about this, but did you see what the first play from scrimmage was on Friday?
I did, but I don't remember. Was it a jet sweep?
Pop pass? It was a jet sweep. Yeah, it was a jet sweep.
It's an easy way to get the quarterback into a rhythm. I think
Latrell was just trolling the entire Sooner Nation. You know what I mean?
I think he knows better than that. He knows y'all well.
Let me give a quick update on recruiting. We haven't talked recruiting since the season has started and with any of our previews. Real quick, Texas has finally jumped Oklahoma. Oklahoma maintaining ninth in the nation in recruiting, according to 247. Texas has jumped Oklahoma and all the way to 7th with the addition of Jamie French and Jonah Williams. Kevin, before you break down these two athletes, is Jamie French spelled with 2 F's?
It is spelled with 2 F's.
Seriously, the next player at Texas that I have to hate simply because he has a stupid name? Is this who this guy is? Is he the Robots Taylor, the Lil Jordan Humphreys, the Royale Ivy of this incoming recruiting class? Do I already have somebody that's stupid simply because he's got 2 F's in his name? This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Well, it may not be that bad because it's still pronounced French, no matter how it looks. So it's not like Romance, which is a different name. Royale. Which is a unique name. Or DeMarvion Overshown. I know you love that one too.
I hated him. I hated him.
All these things had, all these guys played well against OU too. I think that has something to do with it too. It's not like, their third string, he's a backup punter. You couldn't care less. Think about all those guys you mentioned. They all played well.
They all contributed to wins over Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, yes. 5-star receiver. Yeah. Overshown was there in 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, he was there for the 49-0 win. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, he's the difference. Okay, tell us about Jamie. I got a stupid last name, French, and tell us a little bit about Jonah Williams. What's up with these guys?
All right, so French, 5-star receiver, really good route runner, great speed, great hands. Just your typical modern-day college receiver that you want. It's about 6'1.5", 6'2", 190.
Out of Texas?
Good. No, he's actually out of Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, won this one really over Alabama. He was committed to Alabama when Saban was there, decommitted after Saban left. Still went and visited, also visited LSU, Miami. Was a big player in his recruitment as well. This one might still come down to the end of the season because Miami is not going to stop recruiting him, especially after the start that they had. I'm sure they'll keep putting the pressure on him. But hopefully we keep playing well. We'll be able to sign him. We're also really excited about Jonah Williams. I think OU fans should remember this. It seemed like at one point in time, he was pretty much – it felt like he was a lock to commit to OU. I'm not sure what happened over that time, but Texas kind of just stayed with it. He plays baseball. He's actually MLB prospect. We'll see if he gets drafted. He could pitch 95 miles an hour. He's left-handed too. So we'll see what happens when the draft comes around. The plan is for him to play football and baseball at Texas. Obviously, A&M was big in this recruitment. We took their baseball coach. I think that helped Texas a lot. Having him here, it really fits with him, football and baseball. So hopefully he doesn't go to the MLB because he's a guy that can play safety. If he puts on a little bit of weight, he can spin down to linebacker. He can also play offense. I think, they kicked off their season. He plays for Galveston Ball High School. He had 4 touchdowns. Took the opening kickback for a touchdown. Had 2 receiving touchdowns and a rushing touchdown. He's one of those freak athletes, who could just play anywhere. So, yeah, hopefully he doesn't end up in MLB. And
Jonah
he can play
Williams.
for us next year. Jonah
Williams, let me give you a little life advice, okay? If you're listening, which I'm sure he's listening. We're big in Galveston. Jonah, Major League Baseball is where it's at, okay? You got guaranteed contracts. You have less wear and tear on your body. It's a prolonged career, okay? You play football, it's a good chance you get hurt, probably at Texas, probably like in a spring game. There goes your NIL. You're never going to see the field of the NFL, and you jeopardize all your chances of playing baseball. Take the draft money now. Is that good advice, Kevin? You support that?
I don't, but I support him doing whatever he wants to do, which is probably going to Texas. Because why wouldn't you want to go there?
Kevin, speaking of recruiting and Miami, just as a side note before we start previewing the rest of the games, did you see what Miami was doing to Florida's recruits after they won?
Oh, yeah, it was great. It was great.
I don't know that I've ever seen that, but I loved it. It's so on brand for Miami. I don't even know.
Well, I can tell you where I've seen it before. Last year, when Texas beat Alabama, Keelan Robinson, who had transferred from Alabama to Texas, went over to the recruits and was telling all of them to come to Texas. Yeah.
I love it.
It was great.
I love it. Oh, it's so good. All right, we're in week 2. The marquee matchup is Texas-Michigan. We're going to spend a lot of time on that, but we have to go through our picks. Okay, we didn't talk USC, LSU, but that resulted in a loss for both Kevin and I. We both had LSU. Just a real quick recap of that game. I can sum it up. Brian Kelly got out-coached, which I can't believe I'm saying that about Lincoln Riley, but it's more of an indictment of Brian Kelly. They should have won that game. Kevin, they had the lead twice in the fourth quarter. His players are over there on the sideline acting like they had won. No discipline on the field, dumb penalties. It was bad, dude. I thought LSU was the better team. I mean, not by a lot. I don't think either of those teams are that good. But, man, I just thought he got out-coached.
Yeah, it was just a lack of discipline, like you mentioned, and 4 personal fouls for LSU.
Stupid.
Just some kind of dumb things you wouldn't expect from a Brian Kelly team, right? The way he's kind of a stick. I mean, I just don't remember seeing those kind of things at Notre Dame. I know LSU, you get a different type of player, different type of athlete, but 4 personal foul penalties in a close game. This is not like you're playing McNeese State where you can get away with those kind of things. And honestly, man, USC, their defense looked okay. That's the kind of defense that you need to play if you're USC. We're not looking for them to be the 85 Bears.
They looked okay. LSU had over 400 yards offense.
Correct, but they looked competent, right? They were
LSU. But yes, I agree. I agree. There was a lot of busts. They seemed better coached than at any point under Grinch. So yes, I will grant all of those things. They weren't the 85 Bears. They're not OU. They're not even Texas's defense. But yeah, they'll be okay defensively. I thought USC's receivers looked really good. Of course, Riley, for all his faults as a human being and just a general person, on the earth, man, he can scheme wide receivers wide open. It's just unbelievable, can he? It's crazy.
And I thought Miller Moss did a good job. He just made some really big throws and some big moments.
Yeah.
Right. So it just looks like they've got a quarterback. I don't know how good they're going to be overall this year, USC, but it was a question. We didn't think they had it in them to even beat this LSU team, and they got the job done. So good for them.
Yeah. So anyway, 3-3 for you, Kevin. I'm 5-1. All right, jumping into week 2, we'll start with Oklahoma State at Arkansas. Sam Pittman's still the head coach, but he's a little overshadowed by the offensive coordinator and the return of Bobby Petrino. He's got their quarterback, Taylon Green, looking like a stud. They did start the season against Arkansas Pine Bluff, so I don't know that that was any big test. Going up against Oklahoma State with Ollie Gordon and Brennan Presley. Ollie Gordon, if he can stay out of trouble, might win a Heisman as a running back. Interesting quote by Mike Gundy before we talk about this game. Asked about SEC players. You ready for this, Kevin? I'd like your reaction. I'd like to know what this means, okay? Get ready to translate Mike Gundy for me, okay? This is Mike Gundy. When you play a team in the SEC, you're going to play girth. They have a really good geographical location for producing bigger type bodies like that. Close quote. What in the hell does that mean?
Well, I think is what he's saying is the South, there's some big dudes down there, some big athletic freaks on the defensive line that come from the southeastern part of the United States. That's what I'm interpreting there.
He thinks it's a geographical, there's a direct geographical relation to the size of people in the South versus other people.
Well, I don't know if it's the size of people, but I will say both athletic defensive linemen come from that part of the country.
Okay, maybe you're right.
I thought recruiting rankings show it. It's weird because it's Mike Gundy, and I thought it makes everything weird.
You never know what he means by that. And I'm like looking at that going, I don't even know whatever. It doesn't matter. Oklahoma State's number 16. They're a 7.5 point dog. I mean, a 7.5 point favorite at Arkansas. This might be a game we picked.
This game is actually in Stillwater, just so you know.
Did I have it backwards? I apologize. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to write the word host next to that. Kansas State at Tulane. This is one for Oklahoma fan to keep their eye on. Tulane rolled in their first game against Southeastern Louisiana. Tulane is 24-5 in their last 29 games. They now have wide receiver Mario Williams, familiar to OU fans and USC fans. Their quarterback is Dorian Minch, who's looking really good going up against K-State's dynamic Avery Johnson. I don't think we're picking this game, Kevin, but Tulane is a 10-point dog. Thoughts?
Well, I want to see what Avery Johnson can do, right? People were saying behind the scenes that there was a chance that Avery Johnson would have beat out Will Howard for the starting job this year at K-State. That's part of the reason why Will Howard transferred to Ohio State. I don't know how true that is, but they must really believe in that kid. I love his talent.
Yeah, you were high last year. Yeah.
I was, and I still am. So I want to see what he can do going up against Tulane. Tulane, new head coach, right? Their head coach is at Houston, which we'll get into them and what they put on the field last week. So I don't know. I'm rolling with K-State, man. I know we're not officially picking that for our picks, but I'm rolling with K-State.
I got to tell you, as an OU fan, just my initial thought on this game is that I hope Tulane wins. I hope they have the upset for a couple reasons. Number one, so maybe they're feeling pretty good coming into Norman. And number two, it forces us to wake up a little bit and realize that we've got a very competitive team coming. Win or lose against K-State, Tulane's going to be a competitive team. They're geographically positioned to have big defensive linemen, Kevin, right? So they're right down there in the heart of the South. They've been really good over the last, like I said, 2.5, 3 years. So, OU needs to be paying attention to this game. They need to be ready. Number 23, Georgia Tech at Syracuse. Syracuse is 2.5 point dog. Bowling Green at Penn State. Penn State is favored by 34.5. A game we might pick, Iowa State at number 21, Iowa. Iowa's a 3-point favorite. Matt Campbell, 1-6 versus Iowa. As good as we think Matt Campbell is as a coach, his name has been up for job openings for the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, he was even up for the OU opening, at least on the periphery. 1-6 against Iowa. Iowa's quarterback, Cade McNamara, is looking pretty good. The number I think to bet, and we might pick this game, but the number I think to bet's the over-under at 35. I think I take the under.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Iowa put up 40 points against in their first game, which everybody was shocked to see because they never score points. I don't know what their issue is with Iowa. If you're Iowa State, it's really surprising though that Matt Campbell, as good as he's been, has that type of record against their in-state rival. Right, it's very surprising, and I don't know if there's pressure on him. I honestly wish he would have left Iowa State because I feel like maybe his shine is starting to wear
Yep.
a little bit, and he should have gone when his stock was at its highest. So I don't know, man. I've got questions about Iowa State and just their future with him. How high can they get? Can they reach those levels that they reached with Brock Purdy?
Baylor will be at number 11, Utah. I'm guessing it's a Big 12 game. I remember like
It
last year or
is.
two years ago they played and it wasn't. I don't really remember that, but Baylor's at Utah, Big 12 game. Utah's a 14.5-point favorite. It is year 2 for Rocco Becht, the quarterback at Baylor. You hope to see some improvement if you're Dave Aranda. I feel like Utah probably rolls.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Baylor will be better this year just because of the more experience at quarterback. But I don't know. Utah is one of the teams we expect to be playing for the conference championship, so I can't pick against them, even with David Randa on the other side.
Cal at Auburn. Auburn's 13-point favorite. Uh, South Carolina at Kentucky. Kentucky's quarterback, I didn't realize this until I did a little research. Brock Vandegrift. He actually was no U commit, but then ended up settling for Georgia. Pretty much 3 years on the bench at Georgia against Lenoris Sellers, who had a rough debut against Old Dominion.
Yeah, South Carolina, man. I don't know what to make of them. They've done some pretty good things in recruiting. They got a couple guys that I did not expect them to get, especially Nick Harbor, their freakish athlete they have playing receiver for them. Guy was winning 100-meter titles at 6'5", 240 up in the DC area. This guy could have gone anywhere. Chose to go play for Coach Beamer at South Carolina. I don't know, man. Kentucky, I really like this team. It's one of the games I'm actually kind of worried about when Texas plays them later in the season. They've got dudes. They got NFL dudes. And it's one of those teams, if you're not ready for, they can come into town and beat you. And I like them against South Carolina.
I feel like South Carolina, you talk about their big time receiver, always has a big time player. Whether it's Javion Clowney or Alshon Jeffrey or whoever it was, was it Lattimore
Marshawn
there?
Lattimore, yeah.
They always have like a dude that you're like, man, why the hell is he playing in South Carolina? Like that just seems to be going back all the way to Spurrier days and maybe even prior to that. So it's just and then I think in this age of NIL, it wouldn't surprise me if they decide, hey, we're going to put all our money in on one guy because that's all we're going to get, And so it's just really interesting to pay attention to. Jacksonville State at Louisville. Louisville's 28.5. Middle Tennessee at Ole Miss. Ole Miss 41.5-point favorite. South Florida at Bama. Bama's a 31-point favorite. This isn't the team they struggled against last year, though, is it?
It is. But they had the quarterback issue. They, for some reason, benched Milroe after the Texas game last year, which I didn't agree with then. I thought it was a horrible move by Saban. I think he realized that when they almost lost on the road to South Florida. Now they got to come to Tuscaloosa, and Bama's rolling. Yeah, Bama big in this one.
Buffalo at number 9, Missouri. Missouri's 34.5. In a ranked matchup, Tennessee's taking on NC State. NC State's a 8-point dog. It doesn't feel like a ranked matchup, though, in the way that they struggled against Western Carolina. But they do have four starting seniors in their defensive backfield, which might give Nico Amalavea some different looks. I just don't know how they're stopping their defensive end, James Pierce.
I agree. I try not to put too much stock into that opening week, even though they did not look good, right? I think we were kind of paying attention to that on Thursday. They didn't look good, and Tennessee looked great. But, this is Nico's first test against an experienced defense in a game that matters. I know he played in the bowl game. This game actually matters. So I'm curious to see. I still like Tennessee. I think there's just a little bit too much talent top to bottom for the Vols. But it's an interesting test. It's something that I'll definitely be paying attention to this one.
This game does not feature a top 25 team or an SEC team, which is usually the criteria for us to discuss. However, it does feature Coach Prime's Colorado Buffaloes going up against Nebraska. Nebraska's a 7.5-point favorite at home. Dylan Raiola went 19 of 27 for 238 yards and 2 touchdowns and a 40-7 win over UTEP. Does Shadur have a chance to outgun Raiola in Raiola's first start against the Buffaloes?
Oh, he absolutely should. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Right now, does that mean they're going to win the game? I don't know what I feel about this Colorado team, but the best quarterback on that field is Shadur Sanders, without a doubt. And I love Raiola's talent, and he looked good. And what I loved about his first start against UTEP, he didn't turn the ball over.
Yeah,
and that's what he'll have to do that again. You just can't turn the ball over. Watch out for Travis Hunter. I would avoid him if I have my freshman quarterback. Attack everywhere else. There's no need to throw at that guy because he can pick you off and take you to the house. I like Nebraska a lot. I like their defense. I like their receivers. Isaiah Nair, Texas transfer, looked really good in their first game. But man, I don't know if I trust Colorado.
I like Nebraska's coach. I think he's recruited well over the last 2 years. I think he can get them back. I mean, look what he did with Baylor. Like, what else do we have to talk about? I mean, Baylor was on the verge of disintegrating as a program. He rallied those boys. So I like what Matt Rule's doing. Let me ask you a question about Colorado and Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, the best player in college football?
Probably.
What record does Colorado have to get? I'm just going to say it like this: to get him to New York. Do they got to go 500?
Yeah, I think if they get to a bowl game, I think he can get there. If he keeps having games like he had in that first game against North Dakota State, where he's 100 yards receiving, playing all the snaps on defense, have maybe a couple of pick sixes. Maybe they happen to use him as a returner too if he breaks one.
Back in the 60s, Steve Owens won the Heisman. I believe OU went like 6-6. Paul Hornung won a Heisman for Notre Dame at like 5-7. I don't even think they had a winning record. I just don't think you can do that anymore. I don't think you can be. I just don't think he has a chance. I think they got to have 7 or 8 wins and be somewhat relevant in the Big 12. But I kind of think he's the best player in college football right now.
He's really good, man.
He might. Is Will Johnson? We'll talk about Will Johnson. Is he the only corner better than Travis Hunter?
I think so.
I mean, first off the top of your head, he's a pretty good receiver too, dude. I don't know. It's crazy.
Here's the thing: where do you think he plays in the NFL?
Corner, right?
Okay, conventionally you would think so, but man, I don't know. I kind of like him at receiver. Honestly, I would play them both.
Yeah, why not?
Why not?
Why not play them both ways? Why not play them both ways? You don't have to pay them anymore.
No,
you're essentially have 2 roster spots occupied by one guy. It frees you up a whole other roster spot if you'll play him at both places. You know, he doesn't have to play the full. If you decide to play him at corner, he doesn't have to play 50 snaps at receiver or whatever you average in the NFL. He can literally play 20 and still get a lot of value out of him.
Correct.
Appalachian State. Western Michigan at Ohio State. Ohio State's 38-point favorite. App State at Clemson. Clemson's a 17-point favorite. I would love to build up App State like they're going to upset Clemson, but they didn't look good against whoever they played. I can't remember who they played, but it wasn't great.
Yeah, it's too much talent for Clemson, despite their questionable development at the quarterback position.
Is DJ still starting?
For Florida State or for?
No, for oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry.
You're talking about Klubnik?
Yeah, is Klubnik still going to start?
I don't know who else they even have that can come close.
Boise State at Oregon. This is another one where I'd say they struggled against Idaho. Can Boise State give them a run? They didn't have a great game against Georgia South. But just as a quick note on Boise, Heather Dinich has them in as the 12 seed in her way too early projections for the college football playoff. So they might not be a great Boise State team, but they might be good enough to get into the playoff. I think it's just a game to keep an eye on. And then as far as the spread goes, maybe a game to bet at 19.5. Mississippi State
Well,
at
real
ASU.
quick on that,
Oh, sure.
on that one, the problem was, Oregon struggling against Idaho. It just gives Boise State some confidence.
Yeah.
They now watch that and say, okay, we got a shot. We can go in here and beat Oregon. I don't know if they can, but they definitely believe they can.
I believe it was 15 years ago today or yesterday. But it was 15 years ago when the dude from Oregon punched the Boise State guy in the face.
LeGarrette Blount.
Look, oh, that's right. I couldn't think of his name. Man. So that game was actually on the night before Oklahoma lost to BYU down in Dallas. So my brother-in-law had come into town with his wife. They were going to go to the BYU game with us. Well, it was a late West Coast game. I dozed off. I probably went to sleep. I wake up the next morning. I'm watching SportsCenter getting the highlights. And my brother-in-law walks out and goes, wait till you see this. And then it was the punch and it was everything that went down. So anyway, that was a great moment in college football. Thank you, LeGarrette Blount.
It was.
Thank
And,
you
I think I imagine that guy who was talking crap to LeGarrette Blount probably never played in that game. He was probably not on the field at all. Because if he had been, I don't think he would have done that.
No, Blount was a bad dude. He really was, man. And he was a bad dude in the league, too.
Correct. So I think if you had been on the field actually competing against him, you would have left the field with a little bit more respect than that. And I think he learned his lesson. I'm not advocating for a guy punching another guy in the face on the football
field. But sometimes you gotta punch a guy in the face.
Yeah, make the world a better place.
Mississippi State is a 6.5 point underdog at ASU. I'm not going to be one of those guys that has to root for the SEC, but I'd like to think that by the time we get into SEC play, that the better teams are in the conference so we can prove ourselves. I think this is an important game for the conference. Utah State at number 13. USC jumps all the way to 13 and is a 28.5 point favorite against Utah State. Kevin, we picked 3 games plus the OU and Texas game. What 3 games do you want to pick?
I think we should pick the Oklahoma State-Arkansas game just
okay.
because of the local ties.
Okay.
We should start with that one. And then I would say the Tennessee game, North Carolina State.
Okay.
And how about Colorado, Nebraska?
I like it. I like all this. I like them all. These are some good matchups. Okay. Well, you lead the way. You're the one behind. You lead the way. OSU, Arkansas. Arkansas is a 7.5 point dog.
Okay, I like the talent of Taylor Green. Right, he's one of those 6'6", 220 guys that can run. Although I don't put a ton of stock into what happened against Arkansas Pine Bluff because they're one of the worst teams in FCS. And going to Stillwater, I think I just trust Oklahoma State a little bit more. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma State to win and cover.
I want to pick Arkansas so bad just to cover. I don't think they're going to win, but I could see a scenario where they covered. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to take Arkansas to cover. OSU wins, Arkansas covers. Tennessee, NC State. It's at NC State, but is this a neutral site game?
Yeah, I believe it's in Charlotte.
I'm taking Tennessee.
Same. Too explosive on offense.
All right, your boy Shadur. Shadur versus Dylan Raiola. Coach Prime versus Matt Rule. Travis Hunter versus the world. Who do you have at Lincoln, Nebraska?
Okay, now remind me of the spread on this one.
7.5. Nebraska's a 7.5 point favorite.
Oh,
You're taking Colorado, aren't you? You're taking Colorado.
I'm taking them to cover, but I'm taking Nebraska to win the game.
I'm taking Nebraska to win and cover.
Wouldn't surprise me.
All right. There you go. Kevin, the matchup, Michigan's first season was in 1879. They have 1,005 wins, 12 claimed national championships. The most recent, though, 1997 and 2023 season occurred in 24. It's an 11 a.m. Fox Big Noon kickoff with Gus Joel and the All-American girl Jenny Taft. The line is 7.5. The over-under is 42. That puts the projected score at a low 25-17. What do we need to know about this game?
Well, like we talked about in the opening, man, I'm just really excited about the matchup. Anytime you can face off against another blue blood, it's a great moment, especially in the non-conference. It's a great moment for college football. So I'm excited just about the optics of it, right? The big house, seeing the burnt orange in that stadium, the maize and blue, those winged helmets. This is going to be great. But as far as the football matchup goes, it's really interesting, right? I think if you look at what Michigan did against Fresno State last Saturday, you can walk away saying, oh, Texas should roll in this game. But, I'm not putting too much stock in that. It's the first game. They had a new starting quarterback, a lot of new guys. I think the comfort level may be a little bit higher for Michigan going into this one as opposed into going into week one. For Texas, I want to see, I think, their biggest key is stopping the run. Michigan, we know what they do. They run the ball over and over no matter who they're playing. And they're going to force you to stop it. And they're going to keep running it and see if they can get you to make a mistake. All it takes is taking the wrong gap. If a linebacker hits the wrong gap one time, and they can be off to the races for a big run. And they try to wear your defensive line down. And I'll give them credit for sticking with their formula because, during the Harbaugh first few years, they had some blowout losses to Ohio State, but they just stuck with it. And eventually they got to the playoff. This in the third time in the playoff, they ended up winning the national championship. So I don't know. I'm just really excited for the matchup.
Okay, so here's what we're looking at. Quarterback Davis Warren. He was against their opponent, Fresno, 15 of 25, 118 yards, 4.7 yards per completion, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, quarterback rating of 104.8. The interesting thing that I saw, though, was on their running backs. Donovan Edwards, who's their featured back, and probably the biggest name outside of Will Johnson returning, had 11 carries, 27 yards, 2.5 point yards per carry. That's bad against Fresno State. That's not good. They did have Khalil Mullins, who is another senior. I don't remember the name, but he had 15 carries for 92 yards. So he balanced that out. But, you brought it up that they're a running team. Any thoughts on why Donovan Edwards had such a rough time on Saturday against Fresno?
It's interesting because 2 years ago, I think he averaged like 7 yards a carry. Last year, he was only 3.5 as well.
Oh,
Donovan
really?
Edwards. The whole season, yeah, it was really weird. And not a good start to this season either. I'm thinking that Khalil Mullins might get the start. If he had 15 for 92, the offense seemed to have a little bit more juice when he was out there compared to Donovan Edwards. I've heard, maybe he's not the most patient guy when it comes to setting up his blocks. He just kind of gets the ball and just charges, sometimes into the line instead of letting the blocks develop. I think Mullins was better at that. Blake Corum was definitely better at that. I think that's why he was a featured guy, despite Edwards being having more natural talent and ability than Blake Corum. Blake Corum was clearly their best option the last 2 seasons. But man, I don't know. They got also inexperienced. They lost a lot of offensive linemen from last year, so they're trying to settle that position as well.
Colston Loveland is their biggest receiving threat. He's a tight end. 8 catches for 87 yards, 10.9 yards per reception, and a touchdown. And then on the defensive side of the ball, we've talked a lot about it, but Will Johnson, probably the best corner in the game.
Yeah,
All
real
he did
quick.
was – oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I got to talk about Loveland. This dude's outstanding.
Yeah, he's really good.
I mean,
he's really, really, really good.
Linebackers can't cover this guy in man coverage. He was just whipping the Fresno State linebackers in the middle of the field. They would also put him out wide, and he's routing up corners, right? Just kind of posting him up, and they're throwing 8-yard hitch routes. He was really their only weapon when it came to moving the ball. They knew it, and there was nothing that they could do to stop him. So my biggest concern, Obviously, the running game is a concern just because of how often they do it. They're just going to keep testing you with it. But from a receiving standpoint, I mean, this guy is a very, very tough matchup for any team, even Texas.
What will Texas try to do against Loveland? Do they have a linebacker that they are going to try to cover him with, or will it just be kind of more of a zone coverage and they'll just roll coverage over to his side?
I think they'll try to do a few things to see what works, right? They got a linebacker, Morris Blackwell, who was a former safety, who has been good in coverage. He's never been a starter, but he's really good in that nickel or dime package as a coverage linebacker. They may try to cover him with one of the corners or maybe a Jade Barron, who's really good in coverage against tight ends. Problem is he's so big, he can still front those guys up.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see if they try to bracket coverage towards him and just play man on the other receivers who did not look impressive, at least in their first week, the first game against Fresno State.
Well, no. I mean, I'm looking at it right here. Warren only had 30 yards completion or 30 completion yards to other receivers not named Loveland. And again, that's against Fresno State. I mean, we're going over these numbers, and there's some individual players that stand out. And then I mentioned Will Johnson. All Will Johnson did last week was take an 86-yard interception return to the house. The guy's really good. And Josiah Stewart is their big-time defensive end. He had 2 sacks. He'll be a problem. But, I mean, when I look at the matchup, I don't – what am I trying to say? The overconfidence is in the world for what I feel for Texas. But I just don't think that they've got the horses this year to compete with Texas or really any other team in the top 10.
Okay, real quick. One more thing on Michigan, though, that I'm really concerned about is their 2 defensive tackles. These guys are really good. Okay, first of all, Mason Graham, 6'3", 320. He's a disruptor. And then they've got Kenneth Grant, who's 6'3", 340. And this is the best defensive tackle tandem in the country. It's basically their version of what Texas had last year with Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. If you're
and then they got Josiah Stewart on the edge.
Yeah, and this dude's he's an animal. He just plays so hard. He's not the most physically gifted guy. I think he's 6'1", 240. But he just plays so hard. Right? I mean, he just fights off blockers. He attacks through screens, everything. So, yeah, that's my biggest concern from Texas offense is that defensive line. I like our offensive line, but it's a huge test. I don't know. I have questions about Texas being able to run the ball consistently, at least inside against those 2 monsters that they have.
All right, let's think about this, okay? So here's what I wrote down. Here's what I want to know from you. If Texas wins, what are the 3 things they did well to win?
Well, number one, I would say stop the run, which will force their inexperienced quarterback to have to beat us throwing the ball, which I don't know if they're equipped to do. And not just because of what we saw, but just Michigan in general, right?
Yeah.
If we're going back, even with J.J. McCarthy.
And Sherrod Moore is a play caller. Because Sherrod Moore as a play caller seems to be very passive-verse. Even when he had J.J. McCarthy, he did not love to throw the ball very much. And that was a pro-level quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. Also, protecting Quinn. Again, they can get interior pressure with those 2 defensive tackles and Josiah Stewart coming off the edge. Also, along with that, their defense, they like to blitz a lot, and they blitz from different angles. And they do with that simulated pressure you're hearing about where it looks like they're bringing 6 guys, but they're actually bringing 4. But the thought of it makes the quarterback think more guys are coming than actually are, forces them into bad throws. And then this one's really important for me. Texas needs to win on first down. And this is on offense and defense. Okay. When Michigan has the ball, they try to run on first down. If we can stop them, hold them to 1 yard or 2 yards, forcing them to have to throw the football. I think if they have to throw the football, we can get pressure on their quarterback, or we can drop several guys back and make their quarterback have to make quick decisions or just have to find guys open when we have 8 guys in coverage, which I think would not be good. Michigan wants to run it, and they want to pick up big yards on first down. So those are my keys for a Texas win.
All right. I like to think in the positive. Let's say Texas loses, okay? Which I don't think they're going to lose. But let's say Texas loses. If they lose, what were the 3 things they did really stupid? Just not these 3 things, or do you have 3 other things?
Okay. Quinn Ewers has to handle the blitz well. Okay. Quinn Ewers, at his worst, is when he's getting pressured. He's not great against the blitz. You guys got after him in the Cotton Bowl a bit last year, forced him into some questionable decisions, especially in the first half. He's really settled down. Yeah, really. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, again, we talked about this I brought this up on the wins, but if we lose first down, right? If we try to run the ball and we lose 2 yards, then it's 2nd and 12, and then they can start bringing those crazy exotic blitzes. And then 3rd is just giving up big plays in the running game. Because again, they're still going to try to run it. I expect them to be a little bit better running the football, at least, than they were in week 1. And if we give up big runs, especially on first down, it opens up the entire playbook, and that's when big plays can happen.
All right, Kevin. Texas is a 7.5-point favorite against Michigan at the Big House. Seems like a lot of points.
It's a big spread. That's a big spread, especially going up against a defending national champion at their place.
Does Texas cover?
Yes, I think it's a late cover. I think it's kind of similar to the Alabama game last year, where it's really, really close. And then we got 2 late scores in the 4th quarter to kind of put the game away. I think it ends up like that.
I have Texas winning, Michigan covering.
I'll take that too. Trust me. I'll take that all day.
Yeah. Look, Michigan is a good football team. They're not what they were last year, but they're a good football team. They're at home, and they've got a very good defense, right? We don't know what they have offensively, and I really don't think they have the offense to win the game. Just based on the stats that I saw against Fresno State, I don't see anything there that scares me, as if I were a Texas fan. But defensively, I think they're going to be able to hold Texas in relative check. Texas pulls away late, but I could see 24-17. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Not at all.
28-23, something like that. I could just see that happening. So I'm going to take Michigan with Texas winning. Texas winning the game. Real quick, let's thank our sponsors, Brown O'Haver. Brown O'Haver is a public insurance adjusting firm. They work for you, not the insurance company. The easiest way I could describe it is having somebody else do your taxes, having somebody else perform a task for you that you don't typically do. Most homeowners will suffer 1 large loss in their life. Brown O'Haver handles 40 to 50 large losses a month, and they have since 2006 in Moore, Oklahoma. So if you've had a loss to your home or your business where you've had to file an insurance claim, call Brown O'Haver, 405-735-5510. Let them handle the claim for you to get you paid. Brown O'Haver. Kevin, Oklahoma takes on Houston. 29-point favorite. The over-under is 49. Houston lost last week to UNLV 27-7. They have a new coach, Willie Fritz, who actually has a pretty good resume. If you look at his resume, Blinn Junior College, head coach, Blinn Junior College, Central Missouri, Sam Houston State, Georgia Southern, and Tulane, the aforementioned Tulane. He was the back-to-back AAC Coach of the Year with Tulane. I just think he's running an uphill battle at Houston. I liked Dana Holgorsen there. I thought that was going to be a good fit, but he just never really got anything going.
No, I remember he left West Virginia to go.
Yeah, which looks like a mistake now, right? I mean, it just, I don't know. I do think for all the reasons why coaches take the Houston job, which is recruiting, and recruiting, right? They can recruit, if they can just recruit Houston. I mean, Houston has a larger population than 40 of the states. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could just recruit Houston, and then if you don't get everybody you want from Houston, you head over to San Antonio, or maybe you go to Louisiana, right? Like for a lifestyle choice, if nothing else, you're not going to be on the road as much. All that to be said, it just has really not been a program outside of when Herman was there and a little bit of Kevin Sumlin.
Yeah.
Houston just kind of doesn't do anything for me or for themselves. And it shows with their loss. Their quarterback is Donovan Smith. He's a returning quarterback. He is a transfer from Texas Tech. Played 2 years for them, I think. He went 15 of 31 for 135 yards, 2 interceptions. They do have this quarterback, though, Kevin, and I don't exactly know how to pronounce it. U-I A-L-E. Again, I have no idea how to pronounce it. But he went 7 for 8 for 74 yards and a touchdown. I see that stat, and I'm Willie Fritz, and I'm wondering, I'm questioning if there's a quarterback battle, because that's just that 7 for 8 for 74 yards and a touchdown versus 15 for 31 with 2 interceptions. I don't know, dude. To me, that seems like a quarterback battle. Their leading rusher had 17 yards rushing. I mean, I could try to hype this game up, but I don't know how.
And Donovan Smith with 12 attempts for net minus 24. I mean, what are we doing?
Yeah, they do have a Georgia transfer at receiver who was there for 3 years, and Mecky Muse, Mews. He went 3 of 57 for a 19-yard average. So there's a little bit of talent there. Anybody from Georgia, whether they were great at Georgia or not, at some point had talent. This is another warm-up game for OU. This is what I talked about at the top of the show, where I'm jealous of Texas getting to have a marquee game, something to get the juices flowing. I mean, my juices flow whenever OU plays, but at the same time, it's a different vibe, right? So instead of worrying about the opponent, right, we got to look at and say, okay, what do we improve on? For me, it's the running game. And my question is it Taylor Tatum? Did Taylor Tatum demonstrate enough to secure more touches and maybe even the starting job over Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes? I really liked what I saw from that kid. And if he's really as good as he looked, dude, I want to see him running against Houston. Is that crazy?
Oh, of course not. No, you go by what you see, right? And we all know the talent's there. And if he's by far the most talented back you have, you can only hold him off for so long. You can only keep him off the field for so long. So I don't know if he'll be the starter for you guys this week, but I expect him to have almost as many carries as the other guy. I think it'll be much more balanced with the carries as long as he can pick up the blitz.
Yeah, and I hope it's early too. I hope it's early. I hope we see Taylor Tatum very early, first quarter type situation, because I want to give him a chance with the ones on a consistent basis with the 2 or 3 drives to really see what he's about. But man, he looked like the real deal. The number 2 thing I need to see from OU is pass protection. Against Temple, they allowed 3 sacks. Houston, they're not any good. It's just very similar to Temple. And I know the running game is O-line dependent. Clearly, pass protection is the function of the offensive line. Those guys know what they need to do. We talk about Bevo potentially being the best offensive line coach in the country. Do we see definitive improvement from game 1 to game 2 in the area of pass protection? The other thing we noticed in terms of not having good pass protection is we took very few, if any, shots downfield. Now, was that by design? Were we not showing stuff? I don't know, but I really hope it wasn't because he didn't have time to make a read and get the ball out of his hand. But that was a deficit in in week one, and it needs to be improved in week two.
Yeah, that's definitely a big part of your offense, right? As a downfield passing game. I would expect to see a couple of shots this week. I don't know if Nick Anderson is back for you guys yet,
I haven't
but
heard either.
you have the guys that take shots. You got Brendan Thompson. That's the one thing we know he's good at, right? I've heard that there's been improvement there overall with him running the route tree. I don't know about that yet, but we do know he can run deep. So we'd like to see it. Jackson Arnold clearly has the arm strength to get him the ball in those situations. So hopefully for you guys, you can see that, because I know there's a little bit of uneasiness about the way the offense look. So,
yeah, it's consternation.
Yeah,
yep.
It'll feel nice for you guys to just see one or two downfield shots hit.
Okay, and so the third thing I want to see is right in line with what you just said. Talk about downfield. I want to see improved play from wide receivers not named Deion Burks. Okay, whether that's because we see different guys, i.e., Petaway with a little bit more run. Nick Anderson is healthy. Andrel Anthony gets some more looks because I don't think he got targeted very much. And then the aforementioned Brendan Thompson. He was not impressive in game one. For all the talk about improved route running and all this and all that, he didn't look like he had better route running, and he did not take the top off the defense one time. That's concerning. And he had a couple drops. So the wide receivers, while I don't think Gavin Freeman makes a big deal in this, in terms of the outlook of that position group, I do think we have to see an improvement there. We've got the dudes to do it, but we got to see it. And especially, it's just like I said against Temple, especially against an opponent like Houston. This isn't even the Houston team that took y'all to a one-score game, is it? I mean, they've lost two since then, right?
Yeah, I mean, we their best receiver is on our team now, Matthew Golden.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just Oklahoma's got to be dominant, right? I mean, we were the score would indicate that we were dominant against Temple, and our defense was dominant. And I expect to see that same level of performance defensively, just because we're so deep across all three lines of defense. But offensively, everything to me is on the offensive side of the ball. And the number one word that came out of Brent Venables' press conference, as well as Seth Luttrell's, was rhythm. They simply didn't have any kind of good rhythm for the majority of the game. And that's what I want to see. Running the ball, establishing a rhythm, establishing a physical identity, and mauling the Houston Cougars.
Yeah, man. I mean, if their first game is any indication of what we're going to get from them in week two, you guys should really control this game. And yeah, the offense, what a great opportunity, right? And hopefully for these receivers you talked about, they see this as an opportunity, right? For a Petaway, a Thompson, the top guys are out. I don't know if Nick Anderson's going to play. Obviously Farouk is going to be out. So it's an opportunity for you to get some reps where you didn't expect to get them. So if it was me, you would try to go out there and say, I'm taking this job, and the guys that are hurt are not going to get their job back because I'm going to make the coaches keep me on the field.
Which is the exact opposite of what we saw.
Yeah.
Right? It really was. I mean, you look at poor J.J. Hester. I love you, bud, but you can't have drops like that against Temple when you're trying to win playing time. And they were just talking. Brendan Thompson had drops. And a lot of that affects the rhythm, right? You complete some of those passes, but I didn't love those passes, right? Because they were short, intermediate passes. Yes, some things could have happened for it, but I just didn't like what was happening there. I don't know. Seth Luttrell, Joe John, I hope you're listening. Let's just run the damn ball. All right. Let's establish a rhythm, and let's just beat them to dirt.
And Kevin, that sets up the deep shot. That sets up the deep shots when you run the
Kevin,
ball.
OU's a 29-point favorite. OU covers the 29.
Yeah.
Whether the offense sucks or not, I just think that's terrible. Kevin, we have NFL games tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, you've got Patrick Mahomes going against Lamar Jackson. Any thoughts on opening weekend of the NFL?
Well, it's great, man. It's always fun to have that Thursday night game. Expected another big season for the Chiefs and for the Ravens. So I think you really couldn't have a better matchup to start the season. I'm excited to see my guy Xavier Worthy.
Is Hollywood Brown healthy yet?
No, he'll be out week 1.
He's out week 1. Um,
Also, you get your guy Mark Andrews tomorrow too.
Mahomes is entering. He has the possibility of winning 3 Super Bowls in a row, right?
He does.
That would be 4 Super Bowls total.
Yes.
If he wins 3 Super Bowls in a row and 4 Super Bowls total, how close in your mind is he to being the greatest quarterback of all time compared to who I think we agree at this point is Tom Brady?
Very close. I mean, I know Brady has 7?
Brady has 7, but I think you'll agree the first couple,
first 3.
The first 3 you didn't say were because of Tom Brady. It was defense and a system and everything. Now, the last 4, Tom Brady against Atlanta, 27-9 or whatever the score was. I mean, holy cow, that was crazy. And then anybody that can go to Tampa Bay and win you should get a lot of credit for that, especially as bad as they were. So I'm not taking anything away from Brady, but if Mahomes goes 4 out of 5 years winning the Super Bowl, 3 in a row, dude, he's making a run at it, man.
He really is, man. And we've never seen. I mean, you could think from a skill set that he's already the best, right? Things that he can do on the field with the winning. No one started off a career like this, being every year as a starter, at least making the AFC Championship game. I mean, what are we talking about here?
Well, now Brady had some of this too, where Brady had some years where he had no talent ass clowns playing receiver. And that's how it kind of was last year for Mahomes. He won a Super Bowl with dudes that aren't even on his team right now catching balls, or in some cases not catching balls.
Correct. Yeah, he just carried that offense. And I think that was kind of like their game plan, right? We're just going to let this guy do it. We didn't want to pay. They didn't want to pay Tyreek Hill a couple years ago. I think, though, now they're like, okay, now we got to get back to what we do best, and that's throwing the ball down the field with pairing that with the running game that you have, which is solid, right? They're not.
Of note, did you see who their third down running back is going to be?
I did not.
Samaje Perine.
Very nice.
Listen, dude, that's another Sooner on that team. Is that another Sooner that could potentially win a Super Bowl with them? It's unbelievable what they've done, the Sooners up there.
Who all do you have there? You got Creed Humphrey, obviously. Now you got Hollywood Brown.
You got Creed Humphrey. You got Hollywood Brown. Well, Winchester is still their long snapper.
Okay.
And he has been forever. James Winchester. Remember what happened to his dad? Were you living in Oklahoma when that happened?
Remind me. I don't think so. It's not for me.
His dad worked at the airport and got shot. Worked for Southwest.
Oh, no, I remember when that happened. I think
it's like workplace violence or something. I don't know the details. I'm not going to pretend. But anyway, that was James Winchester. That's his story. He made that big tackle against OU. I think it was against Texas in the 07 Red River game. And caused the fumble on the punt. Is that right?
Or hold on, which one? Are we talking about the one where did he recover the fumble?
He might have recovered it.
The Aaron Williams one.
But he did the long snap. He was the long snapper, and he recovered the fumble.
Recovered the fumble. 2010.
Okay, maybe 10. That's
if
fine.
We're talking about if we're thinking about
a long time ago. Still a long time ago. I mean, my point is a long time.
14 years ago, yeah.
And then Blake Bell was on the roster last year when they won it. I don't know if he's on the roster this year. He might be on the practice squad, or I don't even know what Blake Bell is. But he was on the roster. So, yeah, you had Samaje Perine to that list. It's pretty cool. And then with Lamar Jackson, is Lamar as good as he's ever going to be? Is what we've seen from Lamar. Does he have any chance of really taking the next step and becoming what a lot of people think he should be? Or is he just going to have bursts of brilliance interspersed amongst some really mediocre play?
I think he could still go up a notch. I think he can.
You think so?
Well, I do. I'm a believer, man. I always have been. I mean, he's been a 2-time MVP. Let's not forget that.
Listen, when Lamar is on, he is unfreaking believable. Like, you can't touch him, you can't stop him. He's just too hard to defend, running the ball, throwing the ball. But there'll be times, man, he'll hit a running back in the knees, out of the backfield, or sailing over the top of a guy with a crossing pattern. He's not the most consistent, but when he's on, he is dynamic. Mark Andrews, listen, that's what a tight end. That's what you need in Oklahoma. We talk about Loveland at Michigan. Oklahoma needs to get back to that tight end. We saw a little bit of it with Bauer Sharp, kind of touchdown on the first drive. I'd love to see that some more. I don't know. I'm excited about the NFL. The Cowboys play the Browns on Sunday. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, the Sunday afternoon game.
We'll talk a little bit about more of that when we do the recap show on Sunday. So we'll get into some Cowboy talk. Anything else that's going on in the world of the NFL? Kevin, Texas plays Michigan. I'll give you the final thoughts.
Hey, hook 'em horns, man. Let's go. I'm excited about going up there, and I hope we can get the win. It'll be hopefully another historic moment for the University of Texas like we had last year at Tuscaloosa.
Hopefully Michigan arises from the dead. Sharon Moore is reminded of how much he has to hate Texas as well. Just that the Sooner blood going through his veins, realizes he hates burnt orange, and he figures out some way to beat the University of Texas. It's going to be a long shot for him. Kevin, great show. Have a great evening. Boomer!
Hook 'em.